Introduced in 2004, the NASCAR playoff system has been through various revisions and reworks over the past 20 years. In total, there are 5 different variations of the system, each with their pros and cons. And today, I'm going to be ranking them from worst to best based on a variety of factors. How entertaining is it? How fair is it? And ultimately, does it crown the right champion? We won't be comparing any of these against any of the Winston Cup formats either. That's a whole different can of worms for a completely different time. This video is just going to be about the chase/playoffs, so let's get into it. Ranking in last place is the 2014 to 2016 version of the playoffs, known at the time as the Chase Grid. Yeah, NASCAR hadn't gone full casual sports fan mode yet, and we're still sticking with the Chase for the Cup branding, but had to change the name up a little bit just to let people know that this wasn't the old Chase format. And to make that point abundantly clear, they did about as big of an ad campaign as they possibly could, getting various drivers and celebrities to explain it to the masses, and for good reason. This system was absolutely hog wild. It has the same 4-round 16-driver structure that we know today, but the major difference was that after every round, the points would be reset to 0, since playoff points didn't exist yet. So it didn't matter if you were Jeff Gordon, the regular season champion with 4 wins, or if you were Ryan Newman with 0 wins and only a handful of top 5s. Every single round, you would be put on an equal playing field. Speaking of rounds, does anybody remember how they used to have actual titles? The Challenger Round, Contender Round, and Eliminator Round? Yeah, no wonder those didn't stick, they're not very catchy. By the time the Chase rolled around, even the NBC commentators had already resigned themselves to just calling them the Round of 16, Round of 12, etc. But back to my previous point, yeah, this system was an absolute crapshoot. Truly nothing mattered in the regular season since playoff points weren't a thing yet, and honestly, you could say nothing really matters up until the last handful of races in the actual chase. The first 29 to 32 races of the season just felt like they held so little weight in this system, and all that mattered was performing when it was most vital. This system also introduced the highly controversial win and you're in feature, where all you need to do is luck your way into one race win and you'll more than likely qualify for the chase. AJ Allmendinger was notably able to take advantage of this in this format's first year, qualifying with a clutch win at Watkins Glen. While this certainly adds a lot of hype to the bubble battle as we've seen over the years, it also means that you inevitably end up with a couple of guys who are just begging to be eliminated in the first round, as they usually score a win on a super speedway or road course but can't keep up on any of the more traditional racetracks. Save for your occasional upset, this usually makes the round of 16 incredibly boring to sit through. Furthermore, while this points format emphasizes winning more so than previous formats, it also doesn't. Since playoff points don't exist, if you win the Daytona 500, there is 0 incentive to win another race for the rest of the regular season. Other than money, of course. Despite the system being crafted to focus so heavily on winning, one winless driver, the aforementioned Ryan Newman, managed to make it to the championship round, just by virtue of steering clear of the slew of chase drama that year. Denny Hamlin also made it to the Final Four, only scoring 1 win early in the season at Talladega of all places. Meanwhile, Jeff Gordon and Brad Keselowski, who had 10 combined wins, both missed the Final Four. All it took under the system was a single bad race for you to face elimination, no matter how good your season had been up to that point. Flat tire? Sorry, you're done. Blown engine? Sounds like a skill issue, you didn't deserve to advance anyway. Joey Logano drives through you for no good reason even though he's already advanced to the next round? Yep, it's over for you, pal. But a guy who misses a third of the season? Yeah, he's gonna be your champion. Honestly, it feels like Brian France devised the system just to stop Jimmy Johnson from winning more championships, as it just feels more like random chance determines who wins the title than any actual speed or skill you show on the track. So it's quite ironic that Jimmy Johnson would win his 7th championship in 2016 after being the 10th best driver of the year. Yes, you heard me right. A guy who shouldn't have even made the round of 8 won the championship thanks to a timely win at Martinsville and his championship contenders crashing each other on a late race restart at Homestead, which honestly shouldn't have ever happened. I need to calm down. Let's move on to the next format. Ranking in 4th is the original iteration of the Chase for the Cup from 2004 to 2006, affectionately referred to by fans as the Matt Kenseth rule, following Matt's less than thrilling win of the 2003 Winston Cup. The chase format would take the top 10 drivers in points and reset them with 10 races to go. The driver who finished first in regular season points would be awarded 50 points, second place 45, and so on, dropping in 5-point increments. And I just learned while researching this that apparently there was a bonus rule where any driver within 400 points of the leader would also make the chase, even if they weren't in the top 10 in points, but apparently this never happened under the original format. If there's one compliment I can give this system, at least with only 10 drivers qualifying, the entire thing is competitive from the start. And there's way less chance of an undeserving driver Newmaning or 2015 Kyle Busching their way to the final race with a shot to win it all. And while the 5-point cushion between each driver is laughably small, remember, 5 points under the old point structure is much closer to 1 point by today's standards, it's still, funnily enough, more of a reward for your efforts than the 2014 to 2016 version of the chase gave you. And under this format, you could argue that while the best driver all season long may not win the title, whoever did still put together a championship caliber season. In 2004, Kurt Busch would have finished 237 points behind Jeff Gordon in a Winston Cup format. But he was still the 4th best driver that season and put together a respectable enough stint in the final 10 races to reasonably be crowned the champion. In 2005, Tony Stewart was the best driver all season long and still walked away with the cup under the chase format, just with a slightly smaller points cushion, so that's good to see on all fronts. And in 2006, Matt Kenseth would have won the championship under a Winston Cup format, but only by 1 point over Jimmy Johnson, who did it under the chase format. Ironically, with a way larger points cushion. Hey, aren't we defeating the whole premise of a points reset? But that aside, honestly, this one pretty much feels like a toss-up. And close enough to where you can say Jimmy put together a good enough season to deserve it. So while this original point system is by no means perfect, it still doesn't reward wins like it set out to do, and the reset just feels incredibly arbitrary. It does still require a driver to put together a championship winning stretch of races while competing strictly against the other 9 best drivers in the field. And so, moving up to 3rd place, we have the 2007 to 2010 revision of this format. It's almost exactly the same, with 2 small tweaks. Now, 12 drivers make the chase instead of 10. This was done because popular drivers could still miss the chase even with multiple wins, like Jeff Gordon in 2005 and Tony Stewart in 2006. And now, when the points are reset, your points cushion isn't based on your regular season points finish, rather how many wins you had going into the chase, with each win being worth 10 bonus points. While I personally don't like expanding the chase field to 12 drivers, as mentioned before, if you're not in the top 10 by the end of the season, do you really deserve a shot at the title? I do think readjusting the seeding to focus on wins is a good change, as ultimately that's why the chase format was introduced to begin with, to stop perfectly fine drivers like Matt Kenseth from putting together good, consistent seasons. It's about winning, baby. Although I still would have liked to see drivers get point bonuses for finishing better in the regular season. I do think consistency should matter to some degree. But hey, at least the points cushions felt somewhat substantial compared to the previous years. And overall deserving champions were still mostly crowned in this time, even though they were all Jimmy Johnson. In 2007, yeah, Jeff Gordon should have won the title by a landslide, but Jimmy was the 2nd best driver all year and delivered when it counted. Jimmy would have won the title by a country mile regardless of the format in 2008, and he would have just narrowly won it over Gordon in 2009, though again I find it funny that this battle wasn't nearly as close under the actual chase format. Again, kinda defeats the purpose of a points reset. And while Kevin Harvick was the overall best driver of 2010, Jimmy again was 2nd. In 2nd place, we have the 2017 to current day format of the playoffs. This is almost the same as the chase grid from the beginning of this video, albeit with playoff points, stages, and regular season standings being added into the mix. Yes, this system is needlessly complicated, and good luck explaining it to any casual NASCAR fan in a timely fashion. But at the very least, of all the playoff formats we've discussed, I feel like this one rewards your regular season performance the most. I didn't say it rewarded you a lot, just the most. If you win the regular season championship and score a fair number of race wins, then congrats, you at least have enough breathing room to have a lackluster race or two during the playoffs. I mean, look at Martin Truex Jr. this year. His playoffs have been abysmal, but thanks to that all-important cushion, he still has a chance to win it all. In the 2014 format, we would have said goodbye to Martin in the first round. Now, don't get it twisted, because yes, while this format is ranked 2nd highest in this video, I'm still not the biggest fan of it, and for one big reason. The winner-take-all championship race. Ignoring the fact that the race happens at Phoenix now, dear God, why? NASCAR racing is just too chaotic to have something as important as a championship decided in a single race. Look at Kyle Larson in 2021, objectively the best driver all year long who would have won the title under any conceivable format, but he nearly didn't, because he only had a 4th place car that day. If not for resident backmarker David Starr blowing his brakes out with 30 laps to go, and Larson's crew putting together the pit stop of the century, we would have seen one of the greatest seasons of the modern era go to complete waste. And even though Larson did ultimately win the title that day, the fact that it had to happen due to a factor completely outside of his control just doesn't sit right with me. People love to compare this format to something like that one Super Bowl where the undefeated Patriots lost to the underdog Giants, but I disagree with this comparison, because guess what? In the Super Bowl, there's 2 teams competing, not 36. A linebacker from the Cleveland Browns can't just run out on the field and sack Tom Brady, and that's exactly the kind of shenanigans that can happen in a NASCAR championship race. See again, 2016 with Carl Edwards. And in addition to that, this system is by no means foolproof. No matter how much of a cushion you get, it's entirely possible for a less deserving driver to snooker a spot in the Final Four with a well-timed win and snatch the cup away from drivers who actually deserve it. See 2018 with Joey Logano. Or just be a victim of a couple bad races ruining your otherwise legendary season. See 2020 with Kevin Harvick. While it's still a bit of a crapshoot at the end of the day, I have to say, it is pretty entertaining. I mean, so is watching a car about to get smashed by a train, but that doesn't make it right. And again, it feels like it rewards regular season performance more than any other format. Personally, I think this format is only a few changes away from being as good as it possibly could be. First of all, why are there 2 superspeedways in next year's playoffs? Who decided this? Second, drivers who finish in the top 4 in points I think deserve way more playoff points than they get. Make it difficult to upset the Final Four. And third, make playoff points transfer into the final race. If you've earned 50 playoff points over the course of the season, you should have an advantage over the guy with only a handful. It should not be a straight-up tie between 4 guys. It should be unlikely for the Joey Logano to pull off an upset in the Big 3, but theoretically possible. More than anything, I just hate that when people ask me what the NASCAR playoff format is like, I have to say, have you seen Cars? I think Denny Hamlin recently expressed this best on his podcast, where he said, in the Masters, the event starts with competitors having a stroke advantage, and NASCAR should look at doing something similar. I know people will say Denny's just whining because he's never won a championship, but I think he's 100% right. But playoff gripes aside, let's move on to the number 1 format. And in my opinion, that title belongs to the 2011 to 2013 chase format, also known as the Wildcard format. This system is a happy medium between the 2004 and 2007 formats, where 10 drivers will qualify for the chase based on points, but the last 2 spots are determined based on who from 11th to 20th has the most wins. This was made as a response to Jamie McMurray winning 2 of the biggest races of the year in 2010, but missing the chase that year. Because, you know, NASCAR loves changing the format to account for extremely rare one-off events that sometimes happen in sports. This system also included a simplified revision to the overall points format, where each position is now valued at 1 point. So explaining various clinching scenarios would no longer be the massive headache it used to be. And this format delivered amazingly in its first year, with Tony Stewart and Carl Edwards tying for the title, and Stewart claiming the tiebreaker on wins. A perfect clash between Carl Edwards' old-school Winston Cup season where consistency mattered most, and Tony Stewart getting hot and winning when it mattered most. And this week-to-week head-to-head battle is something we severely miss out on under the new playoff format due to the various points resets and winner-take-all race. Look at 2020, it was shaping up to be an absolute dogfight between Hamlin and Harvick for the title, and, well, neither ended up winning. It's just a shame that this system was forever tainted by what happened at Richmond in 2013, where Michael Waltrip Racing will pull out all the stops to manipulate the points and get Martin Truex Jr. into the playoffs, in what resulted in one of the most turbulent weeks in NASCAR history and an unprecedented 13th driver being added. And with Jimmy Johnson picking up yet another cup at season's end, it was clear that things needed to change. But manipulation is bound to happen under any format with eliminations and big one-race finales, so I try not to let this 2013 incident sour how good this format truly was. So what do you think? How would you rank these 5 playoff formats? Let me know in the comments down below. But don't forget to leave a like on this video, subscribe for more videos just like this one, and check out dailydownforce.com for more great NASCAR content.